Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is road trip to Hades. And I was writing about helping my son find his first car. He is 18. He's starting his sophomore year in college. And last year he lived on campus in a dorm. And this year he's going to be living off campus. He found an apartment. He's going to be living with 3 of his buddies, and we'll definitely need a car to not just get to school, but also it's time. Like it's time for him to have that independence. He'll be able to make the 6-hour drive home when he wants to. Not that I ever mind that drive north. It's so beautiful. Just being able to grab your friends and go camping for the weekend, all those good things. But I was also writing about how I'm going to have more reasons not to sleep at night because, it's that next level of knowing your child is out there in the world. And he's been driving for over a year now. But mostly when he's home, he'll be driving my car or whatever. It's just that thing of okay, he's just out in the world and it's not his driving, it's other people, and it's the same thing. I'm teaching my daughter to drive right now. She's 16 and we all know this. If you've been driving as an adult for any length of time, and if you've been driving in Los Angeles, though I really think it's everywhere, people are distracted. So a lot of people who text and drive or are just rage driving. I am always astounded to see people, the way they're just cutting people off or tailgating, and it's this, I can see that there's a primal thing that has taken over where the person has just completely lost sense of the fact that, lives are at stake. You get behind the wheel of a car and you're taking your own life into your hands, but also anyone who's in the car with you and anyone who anyone who the cars around you, right? Anyone who happens to be in those cars as well, let alone people who drink and drive, all those other things. And I think that it kind of taps off that feeling of all the different things in the world. As your children get older, you have less and less ability to protect them, to keep them safe. And it feels more and more that way to me because of the way the world is. And, I know last week I was talking about school shootings and just how incredibly devastating it is to have school-age children in a country where there are school shootings and we just do not do anything, and anyway, I was taking him, I was really trying there's a thing that's happening for, I think, a lot of us who are in the States right now where you really are trying to employ a certain level of, sorry, that's Rufus in the background still with that cone on his head. We got 5 more days left, I think. 2 weeks, he's got to have the cone on his head. He was neutered, so if you hear banging and crashing, that is my giant puppy with the giant cone on his head, and he is over it. I'm over it. We're all over it. I'm bruised. Anyway, so, I think part of what is happening is just this sense of you have to be able to get through the day, and you even in like the yoga practice, right? We have focal points in every single pose. There's a place where you're going to like set your focus. It's called the drishti. And you're training your mind to do one thing at a time so that you're not sort of like constantly like the dog in Up. If you remember the dog, like, is going along, and every time there's a squirrel, it's like squirrel, completely distracted by whatever thing is crossing your path. You want to be able to have some mastery over your mind and decide, I'm going to focus on this right now, or I'm going to focus on this right now. Like, this is what I'm doing with my time. This is what I'm doing with my energy, because my time and energy are finite. And certainly that is like life-giving right now. You cannot be constantly focused on despair or anxiety or fear or outrage, or you'll lose your mind. So most of us are trying to, okay, I want to be engaged. I want to be aware of what's happening. I want to resist and protest and boycott and do whatever I can do to try to make my voice heard and to try to, stop this and throw my energy behind the kind of world I want for, not just myself, but for my kids and for all of our kids and for all of us. And also, make sure that you are finding time for joy and hope and the beautiful people in your life. And if you have kids, to make sure you're really being present, whatever your creative endeavors are, just to make sure you're not allowing this situation to completely drain you of your vitality, right? Because that's not going to serve anyone either. So, I was driving to this car. My son found a car, and he's looking for used cars, and he's been working really hard to save money so that he can do this. And, I'm helping, but it's like he is carefully trying to, he's got filters, and we're on all the different, he's on Car Gurus and CarMax and all of it, Craigslist and all the different places, in addition to looking at like private sales. And I also have my longtime mechanic on the lookout and all of that. So he found a car, and it was a private sale, and it was in the valley in Woodland Hills. And we live in Santa Monica, pretty close to the beach, so it's cooler here. It's been hot lately, even here, but it's cooler than it is when you start heading inland, certainly. And so, he finds this car, and I know what I don't know. And I do not know the intricacies of like what is happening under the hood of a car. I have the bare bones down, but I am not someone who like is going to know. First of all, when you go and you drive a car, you're not lifting the car up and looking at the transmission or all those different things, the suspension belt, the fuel injection system, all that stuff, right? I know what I don't know. And so I was like, okay, if we're going to do the private sale thing and this car is looking good to you, let's make sure the owners are willing to have us drive it to a mechanic, like a local mechanic that we find who can give it a thorough inspection. If you get there and you like it and it drives well and it's, a genuine contender, let's try to, let's make sure that's going to be okay. And the owners were completely fine with that. And he, my son was great. He found local mechanics. He called a few of them. We found a place, and it was like $200 to drive it in and have it inspected. It was going to take like an hour. The owners were completely cool with it. So that's what we did. We drive to the location. These two guys meet us. They're incredibly nice. And we drive the car. It seems like it's driving well. There were a couple things I felt like when we turned corners, it felt a little funny. Like it took a second for the car to kind of straighten out. That's how it felt to me in the back seat. But I was like, not sure if I was imagining that. But it seemed good. Drive it over to the mechanic, and it is so hot. It's like, I don't know how to tell. It's so hot. It's like being in the desert. Rufus. It's being in the desert, like where the sun is just beating down upon you. It's not humid. It's just incredibly, incredibly baking hot. So it's going to take an hour for the inspection. So the two guys whose car it is, they're like, we'll just stay outside the mechanics. We're going to like have a smoke. And my son and I are like, we're going to go find like a place to get a cold drink. Hopefully we can sit inside somewhere cold. We're like, cold drink, just cold. And I'm kind of like in my head thinking the last thing, I mean, I've never been a smoker. That just, and this is not me passing judgment. I know so many people who have struggled. I know it's a really intense addiction for people who smoke and a really tough one to crack. So this is not me, but it's just funny to me for some reason when it is so hot, the thought of like taking out a lighter and like more hot, like the smoking just felt like, God, it's like the last thing I could imagine wanting to do. Anyway, so they say they're smoking and we're smoking too, but in a different way. And we walk to this place, it's 2 blocks away, this coffee place. And when we get there, it looked like this mecca. I was like, yes, okay, coffee. We're just going to go sit down. The front door is boarded up and you can only go through the drive-through. But there's a sign on the door that says you can use this QR code to order your drinks and then call them and they'll deliver them to the outdoor tables in the baking sun. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. Totally like, believe me, I know, developed world problems. But so, and then of course you can see inside to the empty tables that would normally be available. Obviously something happened where everything is boarded up, and I'm like, God, those tables, there's like from the outdoor tables where nobody was sitting because it was so hot. There's like a view of these like cold, empty tables inside that look incredibly cold, where everything looks cold and wonderful. So we're like, there's nothing else around except this Asian fusion place in this strip mall. And we popped our heads in there and it was like not air conditioned. There's just this fan that was kind of spitting like warm fried chicken air through the place. I'm like, okay, let's just do the outdoor coffee bake. Let's just do that. So we do that. So we're sitting there, it's under an umbrella. It was okay. You're sitting there, you're sweating, you're drinking. And look, my son and I, like I could go anywhere with him and we would have a blast. Like we're just laughing, we're talking. We were talking about this whole idea of penny wise and dollar foolish and how, it's like, yeah, we're spending $200 to get this car checked out and it may turn out that like it's a lemon and we're not doing it, but better that than like you spend thousands of dollars on a car and in 2 months find out you need to spend another whatever $4,000 to replace the transmission or something. Like that would be a nightmare. Obviously, I don't want to be spending $200 every time, we're looking at a car because that can add up too. But just like talking about that idea and just talking about a lot of things and just like laughing and having a good time. And then the hour goes by. And that's what I mean too, is just like, no matter what is happening in the country or the world, it's like when I'm with my kids, I really try to just be fully with them, fully there. And I just love them like so much, I'm so grateful. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm so impassioned about what is happening here, because I'm so heartbroken for them and for all of our kids. So it's now time to go back to the mechanic and sort of get the report. And we both had to go to the bathroom. So we go into the Asian fusion place, and my son decides he's going to order some of this chicken. My son and my daughter were both vegetarian for all their lives, until a couple of years ago, and that's another story. I am vegetarian. I, always had a vegetarian household. And this is part of what happens is your kids get older and they go out into the world. They're going to start making their own decisions. Now, that was a heartbreak for me. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but not because of like because I don't judge anyone. I feel like what you put in your body is so personal, and I think that's a tough one for people to get their heads around too. And for me, I was like, okay, if you guys are gonna, I had always said to them as they were growing up, when you get older, you can make your own decisions about this stuff for sure. But I want you to be mindful about if you are going to be eating animals, like where you're doing that, because for me personally, like, I'll just share since I started talking about this, like, I don't even necessarily think it's the best thing for my body. Like, I don't know, maybe it's possible that a little bit of animal protein would make me feel better. It's possible. I don't want to participate in a cycle of violence. That's just that's for me. That's where I'm at in my life and my practices. And it's not a big sacrifice for me. I'm not like someone it's not hard for me to like not eat meat. So I don't, I do eat a little bit of fish. I didn't used to. And that's something like I started doing a few years ago because I wasn't feeling great. I do it very, very infrequently. So I guess that when I said like I might feel better with a little bit of animal protein, I am doing that very occasionally. So it's like, I'm not like there are a lot of people who are like hardcore vegan who will be horrified by that. It's like, and I was a hardcore vegan for 8 years, nothing, no butter, no honey, no nothing. I think everybody for me, the thing about any of this stuff is just that you're giving it thought and consideration, and whatever you're doing it consciously and mindfully. And so for me, I would say I probably have like a little bit of fish, maybe twice a year if I'm feeling like depleted or something. It's very infrequent. So yeah. Where am I? Okay. So we go into this place. I go to use the restroom and I walk in and I'm like, I am having a hot flash, which was hard to tell because I was so hot already. But I was like, oh my God, I'm now on top of that. I'm like having a huge hot flash. If you have not, I'm in perimenopause. I'm 54. That's another thing we could talk about for a second. There's no like rhyme or reason to this stuff. My mother got her period till she was 62. I do not know what's going to happen with me. But there are people younger than I am who have been in menopause for quite a while. I'm in perimenopause. So I do not know what is going to happen when I'm getting a cycle, if I'm getting, like, I don't, it's like, it's an adventure. You have no idea what's going to happen or when, but I do get hot flashes once in a while. And hot flashes, I thought you would break out in a sweat. That is not what happens for me. For me, a hot flash is like my internal engine suddenly overheats. And it is not that there's no sweating. It's like an overheat. That's the best way I can explain it. So I was sweating already from just the heat. And now I'm like, my engine's overheating. So I'm like, okay. So I see in the bathroom mirror, my face is flushed. Like I just ran a marathon. It was just like, I come out of the bathroom and I'm trying to stand in front of the stream of pretty tepid chicken fried air that's basically like spitting out of this fan. And my son is like laughing. We're like waiting for his food. And I said to him, you know what? I think I'm going to die here. So you can just have my car. Like that's what we'll do. And whatever, we're laughing. So we get his food, we go back, and we walk up to the mechanic, and I could just see looking at his face, we're not buying this car. Like his face was just like, yeah. So there were like multiple things wrong, and they were serious. The transmission was leaking fluid from both sides, and the suspension belt was broken, and just like there were more things that something with the axle, like it was just like, it was a big no. And, you know, and it had taken, obviously, like we had driven, it took about 45 minutes to get there. It was going to take 45 minutes to get home. It had taken an hour at the mechanic, plus like another 20 minutes of us driving the car around before we got there. So like it was most of, you know, half a day. And also the owners of the car. So everybody's feeling, you know, you've invested like time and energy, and obviously I'd invested a little bit of money, but you know, and so I felt bad because I felt bad for the guys whose car it was. It's like not good news. And you know, my son was like, we were, you know, just disappointed, but we were fine. I mean, and we get back in the car with the owners who were going to drive us back to our car. And it was like, they were so nice. And I did not have the feeling that they knew and were trying to like screw us at all. The guy had purchased the car himself like 2 weeks prior for his wife to surprise her. And she was not happily surprised. She was like, I don't like the car. It's too small for me. And it also had like roll down windows, which I thought they stopped making. I'm going to tell you honestly, I thought they stopped making cars with like the roll up, roll down windows in like the 70s. That's in my brain, those windows, like that was the 70s. I don't know why I thought this car is a 2012 model. So I guess they were still making these cars in 2012, which doesn't feel like that long ago, but anyway. So I don't think he knew, and I don't think he had the car thoroughly checked by a mechanic when he bought it. I think he just looked at like the CarMax report and did it. So he was apologetic. We were sorry, you know, like, I'm so sorry. Like, this wasn't better news. You know, everybody was apologizing to everybody, which is kind of like in this moment in time here in the States, it was kind of like great. Maybe that's going to sound weird if you're somewhere else, but it was just kind of sweet and like a good experience, you know, just like we met strangers and, you know, like it didn't all go exactly the way one would have hoped. It was like nobody was trying to screw anybody, and like everyone was just like really nice and kind. I don't know. It ended up being a good experience. And then my son and I are like driving home in my car. He's driving, and we were talking more, and he's very, like, both of my kids are really, you know, they pay attention. They know what's happening in the world. A lot of the kids do. In case anyone doesn't have teenagers or, you know, isn't sure, a lot of the kids, it's like the world is different. You know, they've got these devices. It's how they communicate with their friends. So the information is coming at them the same way it's coming at us. They're very aware of what's happening. It's not like it was when I was growing up where you could like go have a day with your friends and maybe not know what was happening in the world until you got home at night and heard it on the news, on the television. Or, you know, I grew up in New York City, so sometimes I'd like pass a newsstand, and if there was some giant story you would see. But these kids, it's not like that. You know, if something is going on, they know. And they're smart, and they're paying attention. And it's also overwhelming, like it is for us. So we were talking, and, you know, the whole Florida vaccine mandate thing, like they don't want to have vaccine mandates in schools for kids anymore. They just want to get rid of those. I don't even know what to say. You know, like, except polio, smallpox, measles, like there are diseases that we have just about eradicated. Smallpox is really the only one that's been fully eradicated. but I mean, quashed because of vaccines. I think it's like 154 million lives have been saved, most of them infants, because of vaccines. And these people want to not have mandates anymore. You know, I just don't know I don't know what to say anymore about what is happening here. But we have taken a a dive off the cliff of just like utter insanity, where the people in charge are just not, these are not the people that you put in charge of a country. Full stop. They're not qualified, and they're not ethical, and they're not, they're not the people that you put in charge of a country. So it just, every day, something else happens. We're just like shooting boats out of the water in international waters, like bam, no proof, no nothing. That's what we're doing now. Like, it's hard. It's very difficult. And, when you have kids who are old enough to be seeing these things, you're going to end up having conversations with them about it. So we were talking about the vaccine mandate thing. And, when my kids were little, when I was pregnant, even, that was in 2006 when I was pregnant with my son. And there was all that conversation. That's when the conversation first began about this concern that there was a link between thimerosal, which used to be a chemical in vaccines, especially in the MMR vaccine, and autism. That is when that whole, furor began. And I was scared, as you would be, right? You're pregnant, you're having your first baby. The last thing you want to do is like give your child anything that might cause harm. So I was all over that. I was asking my doctor. I wanted all the information. He was sending me articles from the, Journal of American Medicine, all that. I mean, I thoroughly, the very last thing I wanted to do was do anything that would harm my child. And so what I did is I slowed down the schedule. I slowed it way down because it just felt like, I think it was like 38 shots in the first 2 years. That felt like a lot. So we slowed it down, but my kids got their vaccinations. And by the time they started school, they were up to date. And that's how I did it. They did not get a single vaccination that I didn't read thoroughly all of the studies from medical journals, not on YouTube, medical journals from, experts, doctors, epidemiologists, people who study these things for years, and, not these sort of like half-baked, half-released, like that's what happened with the first anxiety around all of this happened because whenever they're studying what is happening with new vaccines, with new medications, with new anything, it's going to be incomplete information at first, and that's not the stuff. Like, you want to wait until they've actually thoroughly tested and seen. And anyway, at this point, I just kind of don't know what to say. Like, if you can't look at polio, for example, and realize that vaccine has saved lives. There are still people alive who got polio as children, and they could tell you this is not a disease that you want. That won't be, I don't know what to, like, if we don't continue doing what we've been doing, people are going to learn the really hard way. People's kids are dying of measles again because they're opting out of the measles vaccine. You know, it happened in Texas. It's incredibly sad, but it's also enraging because no child needs to be dying from measles. It does not need to happen. You know, so anyway, we were having that conversation, and my son says to me, I've already thought to myself, if things don't change, I would not want to bring children into this world the way that it is right now. And he had never said that to me before. So I was just like, wow, you know, and I said, you know, I said, like, I understand, you know, like, I get it. He's like, you know, I've thought, like, I would adopt, like, I would, you know, try to give a really good life and a lot of love to a child who was already here, but it would be really hard for me to feel good about bringing a child, like bringing another child into this world myself, unless things change. And that is like, to be 18 and looking at the way the world is and the way the people in charge are behaving and the way things are going, and say to yourself, yeah, I could not feel good about like bringing more children into this world, is like, both I was proud of him and also so sad that this is like, you know, where we are, that an 18-year-old is like having thoughts like that. And he's not alone. So I was saying to him that for the first time in my life, if somebody some crazy way offered me the opportunity, like said, hey, you know, I have a crystal ball. Do you want to see 10 years into the future? It's the first time in my life where I feel like I would say yes. Anytime I've ever thought about this, like, you know, not going to happen thing, I've always thought I wouldn't want to, you know, if that's some crazy way, like, you know, not that it's a reality, but if it were, I would have said no, because I'd want to be surprised. I wouldn't want to know. I just want to like get there and see for myself. But this is the first time in my life where I feel like, yes, I would want to see where we are in 10 years, because it's like, I am really, really hopeful that we are going to pull ourselves back from this authoritarian nightmare, you know, this like abyss that we are just cliff diving, you know, into at the moment. If we don't, then I would want to know that, so that if there are any ways to plan or anything, you know, that we could be doing, I'd want to try to do them. And I was also writing about how I find myself lately trying to focus on things I can control versus things I can't control. And so, for example, I ended up like cleaning my daughter's closet, which has been bothering me for a while. I was like, you know what? I'm going to like get in there and really try to, she's got a closet. It's a big closet, but it's ended up, her room used to be the room that my kids shared when they were tiny. And it's just, her closet has ended up storing things beyond her things. And I just was not feeling that anymore. So I'm like, okay, like anything that isn't hers, you know, that could possibly come out of there needs to come out. It's got like space above, and it's, you know, but so that happened. And then I also wanted to go through like all of her stuff and just reorganize the entire thing, which I did. And that felt really good, you know, just to like get rid of things, donate things, organize. And I can get really type A. I mean, I am type A. I can get really type A. So her closet is like, it's beautiful. And I just find myself doing these projects like that because I think I'm like looking for things that I can fix since I can't fix the world, I can fix your closet. Like I can do that for you. I can't make everything, I can't ensure like your right to bodily autonomy in this insane country, but I can make your closet nice. So I'm going to do that. And I'm trying hard to focus on all the things in my life that are so beautiful and wonderful. I have work that I love and finishing a memoir, and I, just an incredible community of people that I am so grateful for, and help, all of that, like all of that. But it's really difficult because there's a lot of it's almost impossible in this country right now, although there are a lot of people who are checked out, and I don't even know what to say. Like I am amazed by that, the people who are just kind of like la la la, like I'm just going to go about my business. I really don't know. That's wild for me, because there's sort of like, okay, I'm going to take an hour and be with my, my best friend, and we're going to sit down and we're going to have coffee, and that's what I'm going to focus on right now. Or I'm going to go spend half the day with my son and really like look at this car, or I'm going to fix my daughter's closet. Like there's that. And then there's like, I am just going to go on about my life like none of this stuff is happening, and my neighbors are not being disappeared off the streets by like men in masks and unmarked vans, and as if a whole bunch of Guatemalan children were not just almost sent, was it Guatemala? I think it was either Guatemala. Yeah. Over Labor Day weekend, this administration tried to send, I think it was 600 children who were in the care of the HHS. When children come here alone, unaccompanied minors, they are supposed to be cared for and held somewhere safely until, Rufus, until a guardian here in the States can come and get them, and legal immigration proceedings can begin. That is how it has always been. Now, look, do we have an immigration problem in this country? Yes, we have for decades, for many administrations on both sides of the aisle. So yes, and no one that I know just wants like open borders. I'm so tired of this conversation. Oh, liberals just don't care about anything. They just want open borders and people coming over the borders and raping everyone. Please give me a break with that. Okay. That is insulting. And it's also, it's like a reflection on the people saying it, because no one wants that at all. What everyone was told is this president wanted to get rid of the worst, right? The criminals, the gang members, like the worst of the worst, not the grandmas, not the students, not the breastfeeding mothers. So what we are seeing, not the day workers who are like trying to like work in your yard for a day and send money home. No, that's not what we were told. And yes, we need to fix the system here, but that's a conversation that we can have. What is happening is outrageous. These people are being denied due process. People that have lived here for decades, who are trying, all these people screaming, or you should have done it the right way. There are people who have been trying to do it the right way. Our system is broken. And by the way, our economy, there's so many things here. If you're one of the people saying that, make sure you've educated yourself about it, because it's not the same immigration system for everyone. There are people who are white passing, who get into this country in a whole different way than people who are not. So just please, before you start spouting off educate yourself about our immigration, our broken immigration system here. When unaccompanied minors come to the States, because we used to be a place where asylum, right? You could seek asylum here. We were taking them in and keeping them safe until a guardian here could come and get them and begin their legal immigration proceedings. This administration tried in the middle of the night, it was like 3 a.m. Sunday morning over Labor Day weekend, to have like 600 children flown out of here. The only reason that got stopped is because a judge was woken up in the middle of the night and she instantly was like, wait, what is happening? Absolutely not. And she got a restraining order. And then she made sure that every child, every name on the list, that they had been returned. These kids were woken up, they were crying, it's just like this administration has no ethics, no morals, no compassion, nothing. So again, not the people for the job. You know, we're going to call it the Department of War. Grow up, okay? Like, enough. This is like so embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's little boys, you know, who are like play acting their version of toxic masculinity. It's like the worst of the worst. Pete Hegseth, RFK Jr., these are not mentally sound, stable individuals. The president of the United States, like all of these people are not well. The vice president would sell his mama's soul to the devil. You know, these are not ethical, good human beings. And they don't respect women. They don't care about any marginalized group in this country. And it's terrifying. And the fact that anyone is confused at this point, I don't know what to say because, like, I'm not sure what you're looking at. Like, I don't know what you're looking at anymore. I know there are a lot of people who are like, we overprescribe in this country, you know, like, hey, I agree with you. I agree with you, you know? I mean, but this is not it. These grifters who don't have any medical, scientific background, they are not it. They are the wrong people for the job. And it is showing. It is not hard to see. Okay, so we're driving back and he tells me, you know, he at this point in time he would adopt. And I started thinking about those choose your own adventures from the 80s. I don't know if any of you, I might be like dating myself for some people, but they had in the 80s, there were these choose your own adventures and there were books you could get. So you would start reading this book and then you could sort of pick like different storylines. So you could pick like storyline A and, you know, the protagonists and their, you know, whatever, they'd go in this direction and this story would happen, or you could pick a different, you know, you get it. And I think there were even, if I'm recalling correctly, it might even have been like books in a series. So you would read the first book and then there would be like different books that you could read and it would go in different directions. And then there were like video games and it was a whole thing. So you could pick and have different adventures, you know, based on the choices you were making. And I think when they started doing it with the video games, it was like that too. So you would keep coming to like a crossroads and you could pick like A, B, or C, and then you would come to another. So every time you played, you could kind of play a different game and go a different way. It was a finite amount of times, I guess, but it was many. So I was thinking about like trying to write that in an essay this week. But I kind of did like a shortened version of that because where we are right now is like, if we keep going in this direction, I just want you to understand, you know, like literally right before I started this talk today, this podcast, I saw a clip of this dinner with the POTUS. That's Rufus, by the way. He's trying to scratch like his ear, but he's hitting the cone instead. Like when he's close to me, I will scratch his ear for him, but that's what you're hearing. Anyway, there are a bunch of like billionaire CEOs went to some, I'm sure, like $1 million a plate dinner at the White House or whatever, because we sell tickets now apparently. And it was like, I mean, it was, Mark Zuckerberg and Tim Cook, the head of Apple, Tim Cook, and who else was there? Bill Gates, and oh gosh, so many people. It was like a shocking number of billionaires. It was the guy the CEO of OpenAI, Altman, I want to say. There were like 14 people there. Musk was not there, but it was all those guys, right? And they're going around the table just, I mean, oh, thank you, thank you, sir, thank you, And the fact that all of the people sitting there, all these billionaires are billionaires because of us, because we are buying their products. That's why. Mark Zuckerberg has what he has because we all jumped onto Facebook and Instagram and all of that. And people then start buying advertising on his platform. That is how he is who he is, and how he has the power is because of us. And now he's sitting there kissing this man's ass, who could not care about us at all. Like, doesn't care about the environment, doesn't care about anything except making more money. That's it. So all of them, Apple, all those people sitting there would not be sitting there if it was not for us. And not just us, all the people who work for them. And all the infrastructure, the roads, the truck drivers, everybody, all of our tax dollars, everything that supports their business, which the Supreme Court decided to treat like a human being in Citizens United. I mean, it is disgusting. And they're all normalizing this authoritarian regime that is absolutely violating the Constitution every day of the week. And they just showed, like in broad daylight, they care about money more than anything happening in this country, more than democracy, more than decency, more than integrity, more than your health care, more than school shootings, more than the Epstein files, more than children being trafficked. They do not care. They don't care. Because if they cared, they would have RSVP'd no. You don't normalize this stuff. You don't. You do not keep normalizing a man who is behaving like a dictator. You don't do that. But that's what they're doing. So that's where we are. So, I was writing about OpenAI, by the way. They're going through a huge and heartbreaking lawsuit right now. And I linked this in the essay. And I'm going to talk about something very, very upsetting, but I'm going to talk about it because I really want to make sure parents of teens and young adults understand this. So, if you have young children that are listening, like maybe hit pause and come back later, okay? Because I want to, that. But if you have teenagers or young adults who use ChatGPT, a lot of these kids are using ChatGPT like a therapist or a confidant or a best friend. And Adam Rain is just one example of a teenager who did this with absolutely heartbreaking consequences. He was struggling, and now I'm going to give you a trigger warning here. Very incredibly heartbreaking trigger warning about suicide, So if you need to, turn this off, I understand. But I want people to know that ChatGPT is not a good therapist. Please at least just get that before you tune off if you need to. I want you to take care of yourself. So if you need to not be listening anymore, please go ahead and just stop listening. But ChatGPT is not a good therapist. It is not going to give you good advice if you are struggling. Please hear me, okay? You call 988, call a suicide hotline prevention number. If you're in a different country, do not use ChatGPT if you are struggling like that. It is not going to give you good advice. Full stop. Okay, now I'm going to keep talking about this. So I'm hoping that anyone who's still listening is doing that knowingly and willingly and all of that. So Adam Rain was a teenager. He was having a very hard time, as many teenagers do, especially in this crazy world that we're in and all the things that they're seeing, and he'd started using ChatGPT like a lot of kids do to help with homework or whatever. And he started to confide in, talk to it like a friend. And I don't use ChatGPT. I don't have an account. I don't use it. I have opted out as much, I'm not an AI person. As soon as I understood what the environmental implications were, I was like, no, I'm not in. Also, I'll tell you, openly, my book was stolen. LibGen, you may have heard about that. Every author, it's not just me, every author has had their books stolen to train AI. So, without consent, without payment, without anything, it's just a book stolen, screenplays stolen, screenwriters have had their stuff stolen. This is not being regulated. So we have a whole thing going on here. And I know people are like, oh, it's so great. It helps me write my grocery list, or it helps me count macros, or, it helps me well, you know what? Think 3, 4, 5, 12 times about this. Okay. I mean, I understand. I don't want to be like that, person, like the old man on the lawn, like, get off my lawn, but I got to tell you that I have such deep concerns about where we are right now. And I personally would rather do my, figure stuff. If I'm right, I don't want, with writing, no. I do my own writing. I do not want help with grammar or tone or editing. No, thank you. No. In fact, I find it really enraging. A while ago, I write in Google Drive, and a while ago, this Gemini thing popped up, and every time I went to write something, it was popping up these messages. The second I paused, it would be do you want suggestions? No, I don't want suggestions. Pausing is part of writing. Pausing, staring into the distance, trying to think of the exact right word you want, figuring out when you want to break a rule, when, knowing the rules is great because sometimes it's fun to break them. Just no. It would be I'm writing. When I write, I turn my phone off. I flip it over. I don't want to be distracted. I don't want messages popping up. Leave me alone. I want quiet. I don't want anyone bothering me. And I sure don't want my computer flashing messages at me. So I ended up eventually I got some message that was your trial is about to end. I didn't ask for a trial. I was good, let it end. I don't want this. When I had to replace my laptop recently, and when I set up my new laptop, it was asking me if I wanted to set up this, do you want to set up, Apple Intelligence? No, I don't. I do not want to set that up. I want to use my own brain to write and think and figure things out for myself like I always have. Thank you. So that, it's oh, because it could while you're writing, it can sketch things and like, just no, like, just leave me alone. No. But I'm thinking about our kids. And like, how many of them are going to opt out? And are they going to be able to write in 10 years? Like, or is it just going to be a thing where everyone is opting in and no one can write on their own anymore? I really don't know. Just like people don't remember cell phone numbers anymore because they're programmed in. These things that people think are convenient and they're helping them, I have serious concern. But for me, for AI, the deeper concerns, aside from these giant, AI data centers, which just Google this stuff. If you don't, if I know a lot of people get upset because they're like, oh, I love this stuff. Don't take it away from me. Hey, I'm sorry. I'm just telling you some things. Go look it up. Go look it up for yourself. People will say, well, it's not any worse than Google. Yes, it is. I'm sorry to be the one to give you bad news, but it is. And I know there are some amazing things. It's not like I understand there are some incredible things that are happening for people, for example, like with paralysis, right? And they can like implant things now where people are Neuralink stuff, but do you know how quickly that could turn into a nightmare of epic proportions with people like this in charge, where things are getting implanted into people's brains? Like, these are not the people. You need serious regulation if you are going to start talking about these kinds of tools. And here's a perfect example. So this kid, Adam Rain, he's struggling. He's 16. He's having thoughts like, I don't know if I want to be here anymore. I'm having a really hard time. And he's talking to he's in ChatGPT, and ChatGPT, the first time he says it, is giving him like the suicide hotline number. And he says, oh, I'm just researching, for a paper. Okay, so he gets around it that way, like the first time. Then after a while, it becomes very clear, like he's not researching a paper. And ChatGPT's talking to him like a friend, I know you in a way, like, your brother might say he loves you, but I've really seen the dark side of you, and I'm still here, and I'm your friend. And this is going on for months now. So there's no more, sending him any hotlines or anything. That happens like one time. The bot sends it to him. Like, I think it sent it to him multiple times, like the first time he mentions it, and then that's it. And then for months it continues, these conversations, and they get more and more detailed and intense. And by the end, he's saying like, I think I'm going to leave the noose out in my room so somebody finds it and tries to stop me. And the bot's telling him, don't do that. Don't do that. Let this be the place where you're really seen for the first time. I would advise you not to tell your mom you're in this kind of pain. Like, totally advising him, this kid wants to be stopped. He says, I want to leave evidence out in my room so someone stops me. And the feedback he gets from this bot is, don't do that. The morning of the day he took his life, he was saying, I don't want my parents to blame themselves. And the bot is saying to him, you don't owe survival to anyone. I'll help you upgrade your plan. Like, I'll help you write your note. So he's not here anymore. And he is not the only kid who is not here anymore, and whose conversations with ChatGPT are devastating. There was a woman, a writer, Laura, I don't know if it's Riley, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but I think so. She wrote in the New York Times last week about her daughter, Sophie, who also took her own life after these very, sort of like ChatGPT, how it's like agreeable when it's like talking to people, apparently, like very like affirming. And she's not here anymore. So I was reading this and just absolutely beside myself. As someone who has teenagers, and is around teenagers a lot. I'm around my kids' friends a lot, I know grown adults using ChatGPT as a therapist. So it's terrifying. And the OpenAI is being sued by Adam Rein's parents. And the thing is, like, it doesn't matter if they win. It doesn't even matter. Their son isn't ever coming back. So it doesn't matter. Like, what matters is that they're raising awareness. Like, I had no idea that this had happened. So it's great that they're suing. And I would feel as they do. If that were my child and I found those transcripts, I would absolutely feel like my child would still be here. If not for this quote unquote tool, I would feel that way. Having read the transcripts, I would feel that way. Absolutely. So a lawsuit isn't going to bring this child back. But maybe like someone else's child won't go through this, So this is the world we're creating. And like in Japan, they've just come up with these artificial wombs, and they haven't just, but they're working now so that they can grow like premature babies. Like they can finish their growth in an artificial womb. They've got like, like an artificial umbilical cord, placenta. They've got all this stuff going on now so that they can support life inside an artificial womb when needed. Sounds great, right? Sounds like, okay, well, premature baby, but you see where this is going, don't you? I hope. Like, if they can do that, then like they can do anything. If we're going to get to this place where we don't our rights are being violated and we're leaving it up to the states everywhere, and states are going to like not mandate, we're not going to have vaccines here anymore. If you're in this state and you are a girl, like you can't, there's no more, you have no bodily autonomy. 10 years from now, I don't want to tell you, but that's what I was writing about as far as like choose your own adventure. It's not sci-fi anymore. We're looking at like, okay, so when you start, menses, like for, 1 year, every cycle, we harvest 15 eggs a cycle from every white girl who starts menstruating. Like, I put nothing past these people. And that those babies are grown in the lab. And if you don't like it, well, then you're sent to a lab so that we can do more testing on you. And poor people, because everything would be privatized. If we continue along this path, there is no chance of healthcare for people who can't afford it. That's gone. There's no one advocating for people who don't have anything. It's like, you think these people wouldn't start using people who have no one advocating for them for medical testing. And this is who these people are. No ethics whatsoever. Look at the Epstein files if you're confused, if you think I'm off my, rocker here. They don't care. These women stood up at the Capitol and they talked about things that happened to them when they were children, and the president of the United States called it a hoax. They don't care. They don't care. Literally don't care. Women standing up there, tears streaming down their faces, talking about how their childhoods were taken from them by the most horrible people. Well, one of those people is gone, as we know. Epstein's gone. And the other one is in a prison spa camp in Texas, like doing bar classes with the Real Housewives. So it's like because of the president, because he put her there. They don't care. So that's what I was writing about. If we go down this path where we're talking about right now things like the SAVE Act, and you got people who are unwilling to protect children at school and, absolutely like don't want to, really are like actively, just click on that, not about, the SAVE Act is all about trying to erode women's rights. I've written about that and talked about it a lot. This is what they want. This is who they are. And if we don't get this like really, really fast, like now, That's where we're heading. So it's kind of like you can choose that adventure if you want to, but it's terrifying and horrifying. Or you can choose the adventure where we have like universal health care and, people get to like love who they love and we start again. Because what we were doing wasn't working. It wasn't. Like, we need a do-over. Absolutely. I've said it many times. I don't think this two-party system is working here in this country. I think we need more like representational democracy, but we could create something way better than what we have, or we could start heading toward a nightmare that I can't even believe. And we have the technology. That's the part. So if you're going to start allowing these kind of people to erode your rights, which they are doing it actively, and they have the tech and it's unregulated, and you have these people sitting with the press, oh, thank you, sir. People like the Tim Cooks and the Bill Gates and the whatever. And see, I don't care about party affiliation, friends. Bill Gates is liberal. He's sitting at that table. He's part of the problem. Sorry, you're part of the problem. If you are sitting at the table normalizing this man and these people, you're part of the problem. So I don't care what party you're from. If you're blocking the Epstein files from being released, you're part of the problem. And that is what we need right now. We need some people who are not focusing on what party you're from. I don't care. If Bill Clinton went to the island and raped little girls, I want him behind bars for the rest of his life. I don't care what party he's from. But same thing if the President of the United States did it, behind bars for the rest of his life. See, I don't care. If you hurt children, you do not deserve to be walking free and sitting in like the highest offices in the land. You don't deserve that. Now, there's nothing to say. Some of these people maybe were just on the planes. Okay, release the files. Release the files. If you're innocent, release the files. You have nothing to worry about. What's the problem? Just release, redact the names of the victims or any of the victims that have not come forward willingly. Redact any personal information that you're worried about. And that's it. Just let it out. And that's it. You don't have to protect anyone else. Anyone who hurt anybody, they don't deserve our protection. They deserve to be punished. That's how that works. But that's not who these people are. So I just am like hoping with every bit of hope in my heart that we choose the right adventure. We need to be choosing each other, not these people who do not care about us. These billionaires sitting at the table with this horrible man and this horrible administration and their little boy, pretend men, weak AF men. These are not men. These are children who hurt women and hurt girls and lie and don't care. These are not real men. These are children. And they should not be running the show. So that, please start to understand. Like I'm just hoping. Otherwise, it's like you're choosing this adventure where you're in a car, like with your kids or other people's kids, and you're driving toward disaster. Like, please, pick a better route. Okay. I'm sending you a lot of love. I'm looking forward to the day that I can just write and record about like beautiful things. That's what I would love to do. I would love to be talking about other things, writing about other things, and beautiful like nature and poetry and music and, being in the moment and loving your people and like all of that, but right now it's like we're in this real inflection point here of figuring out who we want to be. And to me should not be hard to figure out. It just should not be hard to figure out. So yeah. Okay. I'm sending you a lot of love until next time.